King Yosef, an underlying hum versus Opeth, orchid. So we'll start with King Yosef. I think he's somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Alex, plastic vinyl, I'm not sure his actual username on here. Alex, the biggest Tennessee Titans fan that I know, with the best record collection next to my older brother, one of my older brothers, one of my 6 older brothers. He submitted this album somewhat. He originally submitted Ex-Military when I was going to do the matchup. I realized that wasn't on Spotify and it has to be something that I can stream. So I went through his top albums of last year and just picked something out that interested me. King Yosef was the one I picked. I didn't know anything about him. Still don't know much about him. I know he's wearing a bolt thrower shirt on his Spotify picture, so I can support that. He definitely has some good taste in music. Alex tells me that King Yosef is a friend of his and has, I think he's a producer, hip-hop producer, something of that nature. Anyway, let's talk about the album. I don't hear much hip-hop in it unless it's like Nada 5150 style hip-hop, and I'm not adept with the up to speed with the newer genres, but whatever the SUI side boys, that kind of music, was it trap? It may have some elements of trap, but like the heavier end of the spectrum. If this were a bourbon and I was talking about tasting notes on the palate, early 9 Inch Nails comes through, a little bit of Ministry, a good dose of Arthur Punisher, and then some Marilyn Manson. Like some of my more favorite tracks have like mellower, like Hollywood era Marilyn Manson vibe to them, and some Mushroom Head, and a little bit of Korn. I'm not the biggest Korn fan, but I hear some new metal in there as well. Very interesting album. Never heard of him before, and it's a very interesting listen. Have you heard of King Yosef? Going up against Opeth, Orchid. I'd never heard of Opeth, or this album. When I was 20 years old and I lived in Omaha, Nebraska, and I went down to the record store and I saw a couple of Candlelight albums. This one, and I think the Catatonia was Century Media. I got BMD by Catatonia and this. I remember it like it was yesterday. And it's got a pretty flower on the cover, but it was on Candlelight Records, and I'd never seen a Candlelight release in the U.S. before. It hadn't made its way to Kentucky, and I knew of Candlelight from the underground because I'd been in the fanzine world for several years at that point. And I was like, well, this has to be good. So I got the album, a CD actually, compact disc, and I didn't have many compact discs at the time. It was the days of BMG and Columbia House, so my collection swelled when I was in Omaha, but this was one of the first releases I bought there, and it blew my mind. Now, it has elements of, like some of the earache stuff, the DEA TH metal. I'm not going to say the word because I know how that works on here. But this has very little to do with like early Entombed and Deicide and Morbid Angel and bands of that nature. I mean, there's the guttural singing, but there was a beauty to it. And at this point in my life, I wasn't listening to much prog or anything advanced like that. So I didn't really have a frame of reference for this album, but I loved it. And I'm sure I listened to this CD at least 1,000 times. And it's aged well. It still sounds great. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of it because it's advancing to the round of 180 albums in the 360 albums Tourney. It's just, it's probably a masterpiece. If not, it's close to a masterpiece in my opinion. And it's going to advance. Now, King Yosef might get back in the tournament in the Lifeline 19 that I'm going to select, where I'm going to reinsert 19 albums after the round of 180's over. So stay tuned. It's a very interesting album, so I think it's got a strong chance of appearing again. But anyway, do you like Opeth? Do you like Orchid? If you've never listened to Opeth's Orchid, do yourself a favor and listen to it. It is beautiful. And check out King Yosef. Let me know what you think. Cheers.